In a new MSNBC documentary, Separation by Errol Morris, based on the book by Jacob Soboroff of the same name, former employees of the Office of Refugee Settlement tell their story of how their whole office was reoriented to begin child separation.
The unaccompanied children program, which I worked in, was essentially hijacked for a purpose for which it was never intended, nor authorized in law. It was a program designed to be a child protection program for children who entered the United States without parents. And it was instead used as a tool to take children from their parents.
Public protests over kids in cages reached a fever pitch to the extent that on June 20th, 2018, Donald Trump signed the policy out of existence. Sort of. It took an order from a judge to mandate the Trump administration to make an attempt to reunify the thousands of children that it had ripped from their parents. The administration said they had a central database that they would use to reunite these families. But NBC reported at the time that no such database existed. There was not enough information about many of the children to even be reunited with their parents. And still to this day, the U.S. government is operating a reunification task force. And in April of this year, there were still more than 1,300 children who had yet to be unified with their parents. Sloppy, cruel policy. Sloppy, cruel results. Jacob Soboroff says in the film that this policy was always going to produce permanent orphans.
What I came to learn after visiting these facilities is that they were all warned. This is exactly what would happen if you separated. Creating permanent orphans was the worst case scenario.
If we look back at Donald Trump's family separation policy, which is now the subject of a new MSNBC film called Separated, I'm now joined by Errol Morris, Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker and director of Separated, and Jacob Soboroff, NBC News political and national, the executive producer of Separated, which is based on his book of the same name. It's in theaters in New York and Los Angeles right now. Guys, thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thanks,
Jacob, thank you for, I was there when you were doing all this reporting day to day. We were learning it literally from you as it was unfolding, and our minds, we couldn't get our heads around what was going on. And then we saw that imagery. Let me start with a point that the film makes at the very end. I know there's no spoilers here, but it's salient to the broader point we're making with this whole concept of believe Donald Trump the first time. There is nothing in law that prevents zero tolerance from being implemented again on day one when Donald Trump becomes president again, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And I think, what is important to underscore and what Errol underscores in the film is that he hasn't said whether or not he won't do it again. In other words, they have not disavowed the policy that was called by a George W. Bush appointed judge who stopped the policy, as you rightly pointed out in the last segment, one of the most shameful chapters in the history of our country. And as you were saying, I wrote the book because when we were covering this all together, I didn't understand how the U.S. government could do this. And Errol Morris and I share some of the same concerns to this day, which is why I think Errol wanted to turn this into a film. And he does it in the most extraordinarily beautiful, I think it's fair to say, ways, in a way that only Errol Morris can.
Errol, congratulations on it, and thank you for being here. This film spends a lot of time with people who worked at DHS and HSS and the Office of Refugee Resettlement who took issue with this policy and pushed back. When we look at who Trump surrounds himself with now, is there a likelihood that those kinds of, across government, we're going to see people who pushed back or are likely to push back kind of just eliminated? And I worry about that the second time could be easier because the pushback people who you focus on in the film may not be around.
Easier? It could be really, truly horrible the second time around. The people who love this policy, despite all of what they learned about the cruelty of the policy, are still around and in all likelihood will have major positions. God forbid there's another Trump administration, but yes, they would have major positions in that administration.
Jacob, one of the things, as I was reading that introduction, the thing that makes me choke up is the idea that there are 1,300 children still separated from their families. This concept of record keeping being sparse. It doesn't have to be that way, but this was such a cockeyed scheme that I get it. I get why separate the kids, we'll deal with this later. This is unfathomable.
That was not the idea. The idea was to avoid records. Did not keep records.
It's unfathomable. 1,300 kids still to this day separated from their parents in America in 2024. It's a deep offense to our sensibilities, Jacob.
You know, Ali, in the film, Errol, I read a review this morning that called it a forensic examination, and it is literally that. It's a beautiful film, but it's also a forensic examination of what exactly they were doing. And one of the things that you'll see when you watch the movie that's exposed through literally thousands and thousands of emails that journalists like Caitlin Dickerson and Julia Ainsley and Lomi Creel and many, many others who focus on this policy, but also Errol's team went through, is that this is exactly what they intended to do. There were points in time where there were lists that detailed and chronicled all of the children who had been separated by the U.S. government. And there was an official in the U.S. government, Scott Lloyd, who, with his subordinates, he was a political appointee, but with the career officials within the Office of Refugee Resettlement, there were conversations about whether or not they would keep the list in the first place. One of the most, again, no spoilers, but one of the most dramatic, I think, moments in the movie, and I think one of the sort of the most critical points in sort of the arc of this story about family separation, because they knew what they were doing. They knew what the lack of record keeping meant for these children, and they knew where we would ultimately be today, which is, as you said, as many as 1,400 children without confirmed reunifications by the U.S. government at this moment.
Errol,
you said something very early on.
Go ahead.
You said that the point was cruelty, and I believe that's absolutely correct. And the question for the American public, the question for all of us, is do we want government policies based on meanness, based on cruelty? We've seen an administration of race baiting. Mm-hmm. I thought we went through a civil rights movement. I thought we all learned something about racial equality and the treatment of other people. And yet we seem to be backsliding into something truly horrible.
The rhetoric of the past few weeks, Errol, would not give you the impression that we've learned something, has it? And we're back there. You know, Errol, you've done a lot with material that in some cases is limited. There's some things we don't have. So the film includes recreations of what it would have been like for a mother and a son to go through the process of coming to America and being separated and incarcerated. Talk to me about your decision to put that imagery into the film versus using only news footage.
As a filmmaker, you use every tool available to you. For me, there's nothing off limits. We use emails, we use photographs, we use dramatic scenes, we use interviews, you name it. It's the kitchen sink approach to filmmaking. Anything that I can use that tells a story and brings us into contact with these policies and what really did happen during the Trump administration, to me, is fair game.
And Ali, if I could just say about that, we weren't allowed to bring our cameras inside those facilities. There is no footage of parents being separated from their children by the Trump administration. And so what Errol has done with an extraordinary team, including Eugenio Caballero, the Oscar-winning production designer who did Pan's Labyrinth, and also Roma, and Gabriela Cartol, who plays the mother in this film, just an extraordinary actress, is get to the emotional truth of something that only the families will one day be able to describe, and I hope all of them do. But Errol does it in this unbelievable narrative form that is honestly my favorite part of the movie.
And Errol, part of the issue here is that we think we know this story because we were all there while it was happening. But in fact, there are things in here that were first breaking in 2018 when Jacob was getting tours of these facilities. We learned about the conditions of migrant children kind of piece by piece, right? Nobody's actually told me the whole story until Jacob wrote this book, and now you've made this film. What did you learn, Errol, that you didn't know? What did you learn for the first time when you were putting this all together in the film? What was a takeaway that you didn't have?
The whole idea that parents were forced to betray their children. It's hard to imagine anything much worse. But there's a scene where we see a mother trying to comfort a child unsuccessfully because the child believes his mother abandoned him. His mother abandoned him, but because the U.S. government put her in a position where the child was forcibly separated from her. I mean, we're talking about nursing infants that were taken away from their mothers. I mean, this policy was ghastly. And you can agree completely that there's a problem with immigration. But the way to solve these problems is not to beat up on people.
It is a compassionate film. It's a powerful film. It's an important film. I'm so grateful to the two of you, both for making it and for being with us this morning. Errol Morris is the director of the film, Separated. Jacob Soboroff is the executive producer of the film, also an NBC correspondent and author of the book that motivated the film.